But here you've got Kujala racing for Barwell in GT World Challenge Europe in a GT in a Mercedes, and he's an absolute star in both.
And competing against Barwell for the championship in British GT.
Second in the queue, they are set to go racing. Round 7 of the Intelligent Money British GT.
More flavors, more mazza. Now in an exciting new look, seen on Hai.
Championship from a wet net is good to go. Green flag flies. We are now racing. End of that 3. Safety car peels in. And everybody blasts down towards Riches. That was the view from aboard Rob Collard's Lamborghini, through the spray, through the gloom. Sam DeHaan leads Collard, leads Jordan Whitney, and Logie goes through 4th. Lewis Proctor 5th in the Optimum Motorsport McLaren. 6th is James Baldwin. But right now, it is Jordan Whitt all over the back of Collard. Going for the inside line at Wilson, takes 2nd place away. That was a really bold move. They almost lean on each other. Rob Collard gets forced out wide. Jordan Whitt is coming through. Mate, no argument about that. As up front, Sam DeHaan is already getting away as now the GT4 cars accelerate into business.
Yeah, it's the HHC McLarens at the front, still Jordan Collard ahead of Gus Bowers. Grid order then in GT4, but as you said, already some changing at the sharp end. Rob Collard doesn't look especially comfortable here, does he? Now Lewis Proctor looks around the outside into Agostini, and off goes Adam Ballon. Oh dear, 3rd place in the championship, and the 72 car will restart, but right at the back of the field.
Absolutely, yeah, so Adam Ballon gets away, but he's going to fall a long, long way off the pack, isn't he, there? As 96th then, the Lewis Proctor-driven McLaren threads its way through the infield. Look back, though, from the leading car. Now, Sam DeHaan, I was about to offer you, was getting away. No, he's not. Jordan Whitt, as they come now onto Bentley Straight for the first time, is going after him as the cars accelerate their way down now towards the Brundle-Nelson sequence, but Rob Collard is struggling, no doubt about it then. The Lamborghini dropping back in the pack, so it is DeHaan in the lead. 2nd, it is then Jordan Whitt. 3rd, making good progress, Lewis Proctor. And 4th, through the gloom, is Collard. 5th, it's Ian Logie in the Mercedes. We were suggesting in the warm-up session to one another that these were not McLaren-friendly conditions. The turbo car with that almost switch-like application of the power. Well, nobody has thought to mention that to Jordan Whitt nor to Lewis Proctor, because they are both gaining ground.
Well, that was the story we got from the Jensen Team Rocket squad, because they've been struggling in the wet, but it seems that 2C's Motorsport and Optimum have very much got those cars dialed in, and as you say, at the moment going after and indeed taking the race lead. Look at that, Jordan Whitt. Oh no, there's contact between the two of them. Sam DeHaan, the championship leader, is on the grass, and down to 3rd. It's those little moments that could so easily define a championship, but now it's side by side almost between the other two McLarens. Whitt has the lead. Proctor looks to the inside into Riches. He's late on the brakes. He can't quite get through. Well, they've had to wait 10 minutes for this race to get underway, but now that it's started, boy, are they going for it.
Not entirely sure Sam DeHaan needed to force the issue quite like that. It didn't do him any good in the end, did it? Because he's lost ground as they both go deep into Wilson, looking for the grip on the outside line. So, but the first thing that your eye thinks is, oh, they brake too late, they're going on the wrong line. But they find a bit of traction on the outside. We saw it in the Formula 3 race earlier. They'll go wide here through Palmer. Look, not the usual line, but it does work in these wet conditions. So the two McLarens then, two different teams, 2Cs ahead of Optimum, leading the way. In 3rd place is the Mercedes of Sam DeHaan, but looked like he was getting a gap early on, as now to the inside line goes Proctor. Can he find a way up on the inside line there? Jordan Whitt closes the door. In 4th place is the recovering Collard. Logie 5th. Baldwin is 6th then in the Rocket RJN McLaren. But Jordan Whitt doing a really good job here. He's worked his way up into the race lead, and now he's hanging on to it.
At the start of the season, there were a lot of murmurings about how there were so many McLarens in the GT3 field this year, but neither of these two cars have won a race yet this season. So for all this talk of McLaren domination, these two are still looking to get onto the top step of the podium. Neither of these have a success penalty either, so this is a really, really strong start to the race, and Jordan Whitt just needs to try to get his head down now. He is a good driver in the wet, has experience racing the Big Bentley and other series in the wet conditions pretty well, and we know how hard that car can be to drive in slippery conditions. The McLaren, though, looks good here at Snetterton. Lewis Proctor going within. The gap back to Sam DeHaan is already over 2, maybe even 3 seconds as they go down through Brundle and Nelson. Collard 4th, and Ian Logie in 5th position. Adam Ballon, by the way, did not pit after that spin that he had at the start of the race, so no damage done. He is in 11th place, but that is a team that cannot afford to be losing too many points.
Absolutely right. And also Dean McDonald, 15th, up from the back of the grid, effectively. So Jordan Witt, who, if you remember at Donington in the mixed conditions back in August, was in all sorts of strife. He leads the way at the end now of lap 5. Jordan is a man that likes a car with aero. He was thinking about having a season of Carrera Cup. Indeed, the week before the first round of Carrera Cup and British GT, he was at Donington testing a car, and by the end of the week he decided to race the McLaren in British GT. He much prefers aero at the downforce and the confidence that that gives. Well, there won't be a huge amount of confidence in these wet conditions, but what there is, he is taking, and he has now done the fastest lap of the race. Jordan Witt leading by 1 second from Lewis Proctor. Sam DeHaan is third, Rob Collard is fourth, Ian Logie is fifth, sixth is James Baldwin, Michael Igoe is seventh, eighth is Duncan Cameron, Nick Jones is ninth, Stuart Proctor is 10th. Now, what's going on in GT4? Right now, it's an HHC 1-2. Jordan Collard leading the way. There, he's about to lose a place on track because the GT3 McLaren of Dean McDonald will go by. But right now, Jordan Collard is about 3.4 seconds to the good over his teammate, Gus Bowers.
Yeah, who is under increasing pressure now, isn't he, from the 97 of Dan Vaughan. Conor O'Brien, likewise, watching his mirrors to try to keep the 61 Ford Mustang, behind. On board with Conor O'Brien now as he takes the defensive line towards the Wilson hairpin. Is there a Ford Mustang-sized gap on the inside? Well, there is, but the grip is very much on the outside, as David was saying, and so for now the Mustang stays behind. But in GT4, all of these cars are championship contenders, so any one positional change between those top 5 will have significance when you consider the top 4 teams in that championship are only 2.5 points apart.
If you were really confident of what's going to happen later in the day, you'd almost possibly think about the pit stop strategy. Do you want to have the good result here and carry the success penalty into the next race, or do you want it in the second race? But then the danger is that it's a bigger penalty for a 3-hour race at Silverstone. So if you could read the future, you'd be able to plan accordingly. But right now, with GT4 being so evenly matched, every place absolutely matters, and the class leaders broken up by the number 9 McLaren working its way through. So the HHC twins effectively were together. The gap only really appeared because of the GT3 car, Dean McDonald's McLaren, coming through from the back. Now, these are arguably ideal conditions for GT4 cars because they don't have as much aero, they don't have as much downforce, and in the wet you can really see the cars moving and sliding. Very much the same on the damp track in qualifying. Getting it now with the Mustang there all sideways coming up through the section of Hamilton up towards Bentley Straight. But up front, the lead gap is down fractionally because Lewis Proctor has now done the fastest lap of the race. He's closing on Jordan Witt once again. Sam DeHaan, I think, has now stabilised his pace, as has Rob Collard. They are still third and fourth, but of course DeHaan is going to give away a further 10 seconds in the pits. Yeah, so at the moment he would fall comfortably behind Collard, so as far as the points are concerned, advantage Barwell at the moment, at least as far as the 78 car is concerned. These two cars not particularly preoccupied about championship points, they just want the win. And at the moment, they seem pretty evenly matched. Yes, Lewis Proctor set the fastest lap, but as you can see there, he was only 28 1,000ths of a second quicker than the race leader. And he keeps taking these quite aggressive lines. He's turning into the corner early. He's taking the tight line through some of these slow corners. Maybe trying to distract Jordan Witt, force him into a mistake. That could work, but it's definitely not the quickest way through. You can see the gap is now stretched again after Proctor had to go into Agostini. That's right, so the two McLarens, but all it takes is one tiny error or a little bit too much opposite look, and that's the Bentley of Nick Jones off the road. Talking about a tiny error, he's nearly joined the wrong part of the circuit. So far off has he gone, but Nick Jones then in the TPR Bentley getting back onto that bit of the circuit. Dean McDonald has to take to the grass in avoidance. Nick Jones sees him at the 11th hour and jinks out of the way, but it is all happening in these torrid conditions. So yes, back to the original part of the sentence. All it takes is one tiny slip and the gap that you've opened up can suddenly be right back down again. And it's Jordan Witt who arguably here has got the tougher task. Partly the pressure, courtesy of Lewis Proctor, but also he's the pioneer every lap through. He's the one that is the first to discover the puddles, the grip levels. Has it improved? Has it got worse from the previous lap? Yeah, Lewis Proctor can kind of gauge from the reaction of the number 10 car in front how much more he can push on. So it is maybe an advantage to run second in this situation. The disadvantage is that you're getting a face full of spray and visibility can be a challenge, although Ewan. Trackside.
The race leader, and he keeps taking these quite aggressive lines. He's turning into the corner early, he's taking the tight line through some of these slow corners, maybe trying to distract Jordan Witt, force him into a mistake. That could work, but it's definitely not the quickest way through. You can see the gap is now stretched again after Proctor had to go into Agostini.
That's right, so the two McLarens, but all it takes is one tiny error or a little bit too much opposite look, and that's the Bentley of Nick Jones off the road. Talking about a tiny error, he's nearly joined the wrong part of the circuit. So far off has he gone, but Nick Jones then in the TPR Bentley getting back onto that bit of the circuit. Dean McDonald has to take to the grass in avoidance. Nick Jones sees him at the 11th hour and jinks out of the way, but it is all happening in these torrid conditions. So yes, back to the original part of the sentence. All it takes is one tiny slip and the gap that you've opened up can suddenly be right back down again. And it's Jordan Witt who arguably here has got the tougher task. Partly the pressure, courtesy of Lewis Proctor, but also he's the pioneer every lap through. He's the one that is the first to discover the puddles, the grip levels. Has it improved? Has it got worse from the previous lap?
Yeah, Lewis Proctor can kind of gauge from the reaction of the number 10 car in front how much more he can push on. So it is maybe an advantage to run second in this situation. The disadvantage is that you're getting a face full of spray and visibility can be a challenge, although that it looks as though Lewis is dealing with that pretty well at the moment. Across the line they come. This is the 7th lap in the books. We are nearly 20 minutes in and still only 7/10 of a second separate these two. Another new fastest lap for Proctor.
Yeah, it's down again, 3 laps in a row, isn't it? So not by much, but it is creeping down again as we are, of course, getting closer to that pit window. There is Sam Dehaan in 3rd place. 4th is Collard. 5th in the background is Ian Loggy. It's still fascinating to see what Patrick Kujala can do in these conditions as the two McLarens then turn their way out of the right-hander. Now remember that the Jordan Witt car will go the way of Jack Mitchell, who is very, very quick. Lewis Proctor's car goes the way of Ollie Wilkinson. So it's going to be very interesting to see the relative pace of those in the so-called pro stint, plus Patrick Kujala with that 10-second penalty, so to speak, to make up. Sandy Mitchell will take over the 4th place car, and that's on pole for race 2, so straight away you know that's got good pace. Dean McDonald now up into 11th spot. We saw him get past on the way with Nick Jones. You can also see with these two McLarens so close, and you can compare the two against one another, just how careful they've both got to be with the throttle, because they look so twitchy and nervous at certain places.
Yeah, exactly. We're seeing particularly Jordan Witt's car on the exit of some of the tight corners, the rear end stepping out, although he's pulled a nice gap on Proctor on this lap so far. They really are flirting with disaster there when they take these wide lines through, particularly Palmer's, the 3rd corner, the first of the left-handers on the infield. They have to get so close to the edge of the road, and yes, that's the quickest way round the corner. Yes, that is where all of the grip is, but it is you're that much closer to the edge of the road. If you do misjudge it and have a moment, you are going on the grass is soaking wet, you're not going to stop, and you could end up hitting the barriers. So to find the ultimate speed, you have to take more risks in these conditions than you normally would.
And in theory, with these being the AMs, perhaps this is the stint where you don't want the risks to be taken. Let the pros do the hard yards in that second stint. We mentioned how wet the warm-up was. We lost because of an accident, Richard Neary. We also had on the very outlet, the first car out of the pit lane at turn 1, James Baldwin off into the mud, red flag. And all that was just a little bit too much throttle, a bit too soon, and the car just broke away on icy cold tyres.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to be much of a mistake, really. Sometimes you don't have to make a mistake at all. If you arrive at a corner and it's just a tiny bit wetter than it was the lap before, it is very easy to get caught out and go sailing straight off. So they really are balancing on a knife edge out there at the moment. Jordan Witt doing so particularly well, though. He is the first person into the 2 minute 8 bracket now, and the gap goes up by a second that time around. In GT4, no change in position, and actually things spreading out a little bit more at the moment. The second of those TF Sport Aston Martins, the 95 of Conor O'Brien, has shaken free from the sideways Ford Mustang of Will Moore, making his first appearance of the season in the Academy Motorsport car that has really impressed me. It had decent pace at the start of the year, but the last 2 or 3 rounds, this car has arguably been the one to beat. The pace we saw at Brands Hatch, where they got the race victory, was impressive, and even here in the wet conditions, they're keeping pace with those in front of them.
You just had a shot there at Patrick Kujala at Round Racing getting ready for the pit window. Now, bear in mind, Snetterton doesn't have the biggest of pit lanes, and in these conditions, you're going to want your AMs out and your pros in as soon as possible. The point being that it's going to be a very crowded pit lane when the window opens. Now, although Round Racing has, of course, the extra 10 seconds to serve because of its win at Donington, it is in the last two garages, so it doesn't have to be hemmed in on either side. Yes, the cars have to sweep round the previous garage, but as soon as the car is released, it's into clear space. So its pit stop release ought to be easier than many of the other teams. So it might just gain a second back relative to one or two others because it's placed within the pit lane. Now here is Duncan Cameron, the Northwest-based driver, fending off Adam Ballon, and it's Ferrari ahead of Lamborghini in this sort of Auto Italia competition at the moment. So for, where are they overall? 8th and 9th, Duncan Cameron versus Adam Ballon. Now don't forget the Lamborghini here has 7 seconds to make up in the pits because it's got the 7 seconds to serve extra from its result at Donington, and Adam Ballon is in danger of losing another position anyway because Dean McDonald's charge up from the back of the field continues. He looks for a way by. Meantime, through the infield comes the GT4 fight, and this is for 3rd, 4th and 5th in the class. Will Moore in the Mustang trying to chase down those two yellow highlighter pens ahead of him, the Aston Martins of TF Sport. Right, the GT3 pit window is open, and Duncan Cameron is off the road, and that leaves the door wide open for Ballon and McDonald to get up and pass. The Lamborghini gains 1 spot, the McLaren's going to try and go for 2 inside a bomb hole. Can McDonald get the power down and get through? He's got the inside line for Coram. Yes, look at that, suddenly the traction was there. Boom, he's passed.
Brilliant driving there from Dean McDonald then, who started the lap 10th and will end it in 8th, whilst both of the Ram Racing Mercedes are in. So as you suggested, teams taking this advantage to get the cars in early. The 69 car then, Patrick Wheeler about to jump in, but a 10-second success penalty to be served. So although that was the first of the Mercedes to arrive at the pit box, it will more than likely be the last of the Mercedes to head back out onto the circuit. Witt, Proctor stayed out, so too did James Baldwin, Dean McDonald and Adam Ballon. Everybody else is in, so Ram have brought both of their cars in. Barwell have brought the 78 car in for Sandy Mitchell to take over from Rob Collard. Michael Igoe is in the WPI Motorsport Lamborghini, so too Duncan Cameron in the Ferrari, and Stuart Proctor in the McLaren, and Nick Jones in the Bentley. So 5 cars stayed out, everybody else died for the pit lane.
You can understand why, can't you? If you've got a very evenly matched partnership, you might be able to keep them out for a little bit later, because also you benefit from a clearer pit lane. The GT3 and GT4 pit windows, by the way, staggered, so 22 to 32 for GT3, 28 to 38 for GT4 in the race as Jordan Witt goes through. Right now, you've got there Sandy Mitchell rejoining. So now the order will be shuffled. We'll have a look at it at the end of this next lap. 96 McLaren still hustling on Lewis Proctor. All of a sudden has lost a lot of time relative to Jordan Witt, hasn't he? So what was 1.9 seconds last time looks like it's going up and up.
Yeah, but it's not that Proctor is getting slower, it's that Witt is getting quicker. Proctor just set his personal best lap on the previous lap, which was 2/10 slower than Witt, who will, I imagine, stay out, but whether or not Proctor will do the same awaits to be seen. Yes, he will. So these two are quite happy out there at the moment, with still another few minutes left of the pit stop window. Out goes the Team Parker race, the only entrant here this weekend, but
to that pit window. There is Sam Dehaan in 3rd place. 4th is Collard. 5th in the background is Ian Logie. Still fascinated to see what Patrick Kujula can do.
pole position for Academy Motorsport. Slightly trying time for that team in race 1. They'd like to bounce back with a win in race 2. Patrick Mathiasen alongside with a win in race 2. Patrick Mathiasen alongside for HHC Motorsport. Patrick Kibble and Chris Westmail. The GT4 grid sees Patrick Kibble and Chris Westmail. TF Sports Aston Martin ahead of HHC Motorsport McLaren on the second row in GT4. Row number 3 then for Jamie Caroline, the last of the championship contenders. Winner in race 1, but with it all to do in race 2 from 5th. Ben Tuck for Century Motorsport, the 42 car is alongside, but again the Century cars haven't looked really all that pacey all weekend. Ewan Hankey should go well in this first stint, the only pro driver amongst a sea of silver graded drivers at the start in GT4. He's in the Balfe Motorsport GT4 McLaren with Adam Hatfield in the second Century BMW lining up alongside him. And then right at the back, not somewhere we're used to seeing this car, to be fair, the Speedworks Motorsport Toyota of Sam Smelt, which has been struggling for traction all weekend long. And it's a shame, because that is a car that we would like to see get its first ever victory in the championship.
Yeah, they've come close, haven't they? They've had podiums this year, and it's good to have another brand on the grid. Toyota has, over the last 12 months, seen the benefit of GT4, got a programme going, lots of development. You've got cars running in the European GT4 series as well as this British Assault. So, yeah, I think you're going to see a lot more from the Toyota over the next few seasons. But an all Lamborghini front row, a Mercedes Lamborghini second row, Mercedes and then McLaren on row 3. This is another race that is absolutely wide open. The track is cold, it is greasy rather than wet, I would offer you, but it might get drier. I think the smart money is on it getting wetter before the end of the hour. What are we going to have? Who is going to survive, and which brand is going to come out on top of round 8 of the championship?
The penultimate race of the 2020 Intelligent Money British GT Championship is about to get underway. Barwell Motorsport front row then with Sandy Mitchell and Phil Keane side by side towards the start-finish line. The lights go out, we're away and racing again at Snetterton. Good start made by Mitchell on the inside line. Now, will the two teammates play ball here and try and work together into turn 1? The answer appears to be no. Phil Keane charges round the outside of Mitchell and grabs the advantage. And look at the number 10 car of Jack Mitchell from 10th on the grid, is inside the top 5 already.
Really good move that by Phil Keane, because in a sense he was on the more advantageous side of the grid, wasn't he? The outside line where the grip can be found, he used that to his advantage, so he has hit the front. As here you've got Patrick Kujala trying to gain ground as well. The GT4 cars scrabble out of Wilson hairpin with there. Look, the Aston Martin taking to the dirt. Matt Cowley with his elbows out trying to keep the Mustang ahead as they dive down towards turn 3, but Aston Martin goes through. 97 there. Jamie Caroline leads in GT4. Matt Cowley in the mighty Mustang goes second. It's Patrick Kibble in 3rd place, and at the moment the McLarens are trying to play catch up.
Yeah, Kibble had a good run there out of Palmer's. I think he was attacking Cowley for 2nd place as they drop down into Agostini. We're on board meanwhile with Kujala, who started in 5th position. I think he's still in 5th. Right behind him, Mitchell and Osborne side by side, and Jack Mitchell will make that move stick, so at least 4 places gained for Jack Mitchell at the start. He found some serious traction and crucially real estate on the outside, and not for the first time today. Angus Fender is on the grass in the number 9 2C's car, and he drops in just ahead of Matt Griffin, who has not had a good start in that Ferrari.
No, he's not. That car does not like cold, greasy conditions. It can't get the benefit of the tyres, and Matt Griffin with a slide there, almost going off the road as well. Angus Fender, we lost count after 3 in the first race of his moments. Well, right now, Phil Keane storming away from Sandy Mitchell in 2nd place. Their 3rd look is Yelmer Berman. Andrea Caldarelli goes 4th. Patrick Kujala is 5th. 6th is Jack Mitchell as they come now through the S's. Joe Osborne is 7th, and a gap has opened up after them, hasn't it? Before in 8th place there, look, 96 is Ollie Wilkinson. Number 9, Angus Fender, back onto the tarmac. And what's going on in GT4? There was a car off in the background, and it's the Bentley. Scott Malvern and 57. Chris Westmail has come to grief now. Did the McLaren hit a spinning Bentley, or did one touch the other to trigger the moment? Either way, that Bentley off the road, on the grass. It's not going to be easy to shift from there. We might yet be looking at an interruption. So let's see, the leaders come by at the end of lap 1, and Phil Keane's advantage after just 1 lap of the race is already 1.4 seconds. But I'm afraid the Bentley is in strife.
Joe Osborne, though, is on the move, where he wants to be anyway. He looks to the inside of Jack Mitchell to try to reclaim this 6th place. 2 McLarens from different stables here. The 2C's car under assault from the Balfe Motorsport car. The Balfe Motorsport car has to stay behind. Osborne on the tight line through Richards just couldn't carry the speed off the corner. And these two are both losing time to the cars in front. Michael O'Brien's had a decent start, hasn't he? 2 places gained for the number 2 car. He's into 9th, just behind Ollie Wilkinson's Optimum McLaren at the moment. And that is the car, as we said, that needs some points.
Westmail in the McLaren is into the pit lane. There he is, sorting out the damage, but it's not looking good given the semaphore from the mechanic there saying, cut it, cut it. But Scott Malvern has not completed a lap. Now, whether the car has got going again, we'll have to wait and see. But right now, he has not completed the 3rd sector, so the yellows could still be out in that zone as the race leaders head towards it. So it is Keane from Mitchell, Berman, Caldarelli, Kujala and Jack Mitchell. That's the order up front. So you've got Sandy Mitchell in the 78 Lamborghini. You've got Jack Mitchell, unrelated, in the number 10 McLaren. And right now, the lead gap is extending as Phil Keane gets away from his teammate.
Yes, but Sandy Mitchell more than holding his own against Yelmer Berman and Andrea Caldarelli. Side by side there as Angus Fender recovers back on the inside of Michael O'Brien. That's 9th place that now belongs appropriately to car number 9.
I know this is a little bit unfair to say, but these are absolutely great conditions for us watching the race because they're neither wet nor dry. You can't quite get the best out of the tyres. It's not totally wet, but it's certainly not dry. And the effort having to be put in by the drivers is absolutely spellbinding, and it's giving us constantly changing fortunes. As you can see it, the car's having to tiptoe out of the corner. Suddenly, drivers accelerate and realise the grip wasn't there and have to go into plan B. This is Patrick Kujala, so the finish driver for Ram Racing coming into Coram. Again, look, sit on the outside of the road, find the grip if you can, and then drop down to the end of the lap.
Yeah, Caldarelli then starting to fall away from Jelmer Berman and into the clutches of the other Ram Racing car. The championship leading one there is Kujala in 5th position. Comes out of Murray's corner. And lap time wise this time around, I think he will have caught the cars in front. The GT4, by the way, Jamie Caroline has managed to hold on to the race lead, but Matt Cowley kept Patrick Kibble behind him. So it's still Cowley in the Mustang second, Kibble in the second TF Sports Aston Martin in 3rd place. There go the GT3 cars in the background. Look, the first of the GT4s, the 97 car leading the way is Jamie Caroline, and he's getting away now as well. The gap was 7/10 back to Cowley. It's now 2.7 seconds. Cowley in the first race didn't seem to have the ultimate pace. The Academy car gained some time in the pit stops as others served pit stop penalties. My word, that was close to disaster. And it seems that this, in the early stages of this one at least, like the Aston Martins are quicker again.
Absolutely. So the incident between the Bentley and the McLaren we'd seen the aftermath of is being investigated. Jamie Caroline leading, Matt Cowley leading Patrick Kibble 1, 2 and 3 within the GT4 contest right now. And the cars accelerating down towards turn 3 then, with Matt Cowley in the Mustang trying to hang on to position, but of course with 54 minutes to go, it's the second stint that's going to count in a sense, but out wide goes Cowley. Kibble gets up the inside line, so the Aston Martin will go through on the inside there. Yep, job done, coming into Agostini.
Kibble is so good at Palmer's, isn't he? Made some good moves there in race 1, although he's maybe left the door open on the exit of Agostini. No, Cowley can't get the power down. Look at who's catching them as well. That is Ewan Hankey in 4th place in the blue and orange McLaren, another Balfe Motorsport run car, the only pro on the track at the moment in GT4. He'll hand over to Mia Fluid at the pit stops. Remember, they won this equivalent race at Alton Park at the start of the year, the second race of the day, and he's having a bit of a nibble here at the sideways Mustang, which wants to try and escape if it can, but the McLaren looks to have better traction at the moment, and I don't think it's going to be long, potentially, before we see the Balfe Motorsport car move ahead. Replay the start, David.
So it's a good getaway by Phil Keane from the outside of the front of the grid, found the grip on the outside at Ritchie's, went through, and of course straight away Jelmer Berman goes into defence mode to try to keep Andrea Caldarelli at bay. Everybody else wriggling their way through Ritchie's. This was how Patrick Kujala saw the start. That was Caldarelli round the outside, but then he lost another place, look, because that was Jack Mitchell storming past him, and Mitchell straight away almost into the back of Caldarelli, and that down at the S's. The McLaren almost hidden by the Bentley, but they clearly got themselves together and tagged the Bentley into a spin. Scott Mulvin did get to the pit lane, but has stayed there, and so too the McLaren. So both of those cars, I fear, with enough damage to be out of the race. Either way, it is a long stop, and you're as good as out.
And Scott Mulvin then officially never completed a lap in this race, and yet is under investigation for 2 separate incidents. He had that contact with the 57 car, also had contact at some point with Angus Fender. That may be why Angus was on the grass going through Hamilton on the opening lap. So a lively opening lap for the Bentley, and not really in the right way. McLaren battle continues then. Jack Mitchell 6th, Joe Osborne 7th. They're losing time to the cars in front, 3.5 seconds behind Patrick Kujala in 5th position, but Osborne no longer clambering all over the rear of the number 10 car. Takes a tighter line into Agostini, but as we saw in race 1, that isn't really where the grip is in these damp and greasy and slimy and horrible conditions. The drivers hate these conditions, but David, as you said, we enjoy them because we really see the drivers earning their money.
Absolutely. Just imagine what Silverstone's going to be like in November. As I say, you don't need a suntan lotion for that event, I fear. Now, right now, Phil Keane is getting away. He's 4 seconds to the good and does not have any extra time to serve in the pit, so it's very much advantage Barwell at the moment. Barwell's weather forecast, weather radar, is saying there is more rain on the way, so build up the lead now for Adam Ballon to preserve in what could be a really treacherous, really testing second stint. Phil Keane, who has come so close to winning this championship for so many seasons we've lost count, he leads the way and has done the absolute fastest speed of anybody thus far within the first sector, doing exactly what he's here to do, which is to go flat out, build up the gap for his co-driver to try to preserve within that second stint. Up towards the timing line then comes Lamborghini number 72. The gap last time was 4 seconds. It's a Barwell 1-2, of course, because Sandy Mitchell is still there in second spot. And Phil Keane breaks the beam now to put 4 laps in the book. Is the margin over 5 seconds yet between the two sister cars? Not quite. 4.8 is the margin, 1-2.
Phil Keane and Adam Ballon's one and only win so far this year came at Alton Park in the second race. They finished 7th in race 1